My team members on this grant. I have Bev and Loretta, they're master gardeners, and we have a grant from the Nevada Division of Forestry, and so we would appreciate if you would sign in because we have deliverables of reaching the public, and so this proves that we actually went out and did something, and we want people to know about this. One of the things that we want, why this is a big issue, I'm curious. You came in, you have an Austrian pine problem with the top dying, so that was kind of your interest to bring in today. What was your interest in coming in today?
Well, just that we've heard about some of the trees in the area being destroyed by the beetles.
Okay.
You know, and find out more.
Bark beetles, and you, sir?
I have a peach tree that's got some, I want to call them pustules on the side,
Okay.
right above the soil line.
Okay.
I was kind of hoping to get some information on them.
I will try and address normal horticultural and garden problems towards the end because the beetles that we're talking about today are exotics. These are the things, anybody from back east, Midwest, do you remember gypsy moth and the Dutch elm disease and that kind of stuff? Well, those were exotic invasives that originally it was a beetle that spread the Dutch elm disease, and of course we lost tons of trees. And trees in Nevada, pretty special. Either our urban forest, either our urban forest, which is our landscapes around our cities and homes, as well as our forests up on the hills. So what the point of this is to get you guys paying attention to stuff that's out there. And I've been passing this one around, and this is the adult, this is like the number one, this is one of the number ones. There's two today that are really critical. But these are the guys that we're on the lookout for. So take a look at these and pass them around. That's the Asian longhorn beetle. And when you see a larvae the size of your finger, that can do a lot of damage. That, and they produce, I'm going to show you some pictures. So the reason that we're here is that these exotic invaders, which we do not have yet, that's the point, we do not have these. If you see them, we need to let our state entomologists know, because these are key concerns to our state entomologists to keep these out of the state. I'm making you turn your head. And I had a thingy, so I'll try and do this. Okay. So the point is we're going to keep the bad guys out and hopefully save our trees. Now I have to figure out what's forward. That's not it. That's it. So this is the one that we're passing around in the jar. This is the Asian longhorn beetle larvae. And it's actually what does the damage. Once it's inside the tree, it does all kinds of damage. And I'm going to show you some pictures in just a minute. The idea behind this is imports versus internal movements. And I wanted to say this. You could almost eat this for dinner. If you had enough of these, you could toss these in a little garlic and capers and you'd have protein. Good protein. But
do they attack pines?
We're going to talk about that. Asian longhorn beetle, I don't think attacks pines, but it does attack a wide variety of trees. So the problem is that the insects and the eggs may not be visible. So you may not see them, and you may still be getting things coming in at ports. One of the biggest problems are pallets from other countries and packing materials from other countries. And so that's a huge source of these invasive pests. And the movement happens very quickly. It comes in from Asia on an airplane or a ship, and then it, how far can an airplane go in just a few days? So we can have a lot of problems with that. So, and we do have a large amount of trade with Asia, so this is a significant issue. Solid wood packing material carries insects and carries problems. So these are, the pallets particularly are often made from trees that were killed by some beetle infestation. So they just, oh, here, we'll use the wood. Great, but it may still have eggs in it. So within the U.S., we do have quarantines between states that have issues and that don't have issues. So Nevada has quarantines on wood from various different states in Nevada. For example, this is particularly, if you come away with nothing else today, come away with the thought, don't move firewood. Okay? Because if you move firewood, and we all take firewood if we go camping, right? Because usually in Nevada, you can't just go and buy local firewood because there's not usually anybody around where you're camping. And so the thing on that handout that I gave, that my assistants gave out today, is the idea is keep it within 50 miles. Don't take it outside of that. Don't move firewood. Shipment of black locust logs originally from New York on its way to California. Ash firewood brought by campers from Michigan infested with the emerald ash borer. Bev, you want to come and take this emerald ash, find the emerald ash borer here for me, and in one of these is that, and take the emerald ash borer and the one that's not the emerald ash borer. It's marked with a, yeah. So, I mixed them all up. Okay, not EAB, so that's the one we want to show, and then EAB we want to show. Somewhere it's there. I don't know exactly where. See if you can find it and share that with folks. So, the emerald ash borer. Does anybody here not have an ash tree in their yard? Green ash, there's so many, Raywood ash. Ash is a staple. If you wander around this park, you'll see ash everywhere. And if you get our ash trees infected with this emerald ash borer, then we will lose a significant portion of our landscape trees and our park trees, and that could be a big deal. So why worry? We don't have any natural enemies to keep these guys in check. And early detection can prevent them from spreading and causing problems here. And it gets really expensive, and most of the time the only cure is to cut the trees down, chip them, burn them, get rid of them completely. So that's the problem. Department of Ag is the regulatory agency, so they're responsible for preventing invasions. And like I said, for some of these borers, the only solution is the chainsaw. Okay? So I need you to now be my extra eyes in the field, to be out there looking for things that you suspect are problematic. Get them carry a little plastic bag, carry a little jar with you when you're out hiking or walking in the hills or something. Take a camera. But if you can find something that looks weird like some of these guys, and you can collect it, or you see it in firewood, you can call me, you can call our Gardnerville office, you can call our Reno office, you can call the state entomologist. So we want you to help us prevent these guys from causing problems. I love this one. Half camper will travel. And I'm with Stupid, the emerald ash borer, traveling along with the guy's firewood right there. This is the guy that's infesting the firewood. So this could actually kill every ash tree in the state of Nevada if it spreads. Okay, these are the guys we're looking out for. The Asian longhorn beetles, that great big one. The emerald ash borer is absolutely beautiful, a bright, shiny, metallic green. And then these others are really, a lot of them are quite little, except for the Cyrex wood wasp. And when I have this asterisk down here, it means that although it's the beetle's not the problem, but the beetle carries a disease, thousand cankers disease in the case of walnut twig beetle, and infests the tree and kills the tree that way. So if you could show them the tiniest beetle there, so that they see how small some of the pine bark beetles are, okay? You'll find one, it doesn't matter what it's labeled, just look for the littlest, tiniest one. Okay. So, Asian longhorn beetle adult, the antennae are longer than the body. You may have noticed that in that thing. And I like this. Oops, wrong button. Does anybody want a pet? This would be a great pet for a kid, except if you find it, we want to know, we want Jeff Knight to know immediately. So,
Oh my gosh.
so the Asian longhorn beetle, this gives you an idea of what the damage can look like on the tree. Look at the size of the holes. These holes are as big as a dime. And these are shiny black with white spots. You can see the white spots even on their antennae. The holes that you're seeing here, these are big exit holes. This is where the larvae bores, or the adult, after it hatches it from the larvae stage, bores out of the wood and comes out and starts drilling in more holes. And they can be up to 3/4 of an inch in size. The female emerges, mates, and then chews a hole and goes back in the tree to lay eggs. And the damage starts in the cambium or the phloem area. We always tell people when they're having plant problems and they wonder if a branch is dead, to scrape their fingernail on it or a little knife, just gently, and see if it's green right underneath the bark. You've seen this on a lot of plants. That's the cambium. That's where the food and water can flow through that area. That's the living tissue. Bark is like the clothes on the outside of the tree, but that inside is where all the activity happens. Phloem is the vascular activity where food flows from the top of the tree down through the tree and into the roots. So if you cut that off, the tree gets no food and things can start to happen. But then they go into the other vascular activity where the water's coming up from the roots and they kill that. So now it's getting no food and no water, and the tree ends up dying. And these guys are really good, I apologize, really good flyers. They can move, they can really get around. So they're in 15 states already. I want you to see the hosts that these guys can get in. No pines. No pines are listed. So box elder is a maple, a real hardy maple. Norway red, silver maples, birches, elms, horse chestnut, willows, ash, sycamore, poplars, others. A life cycle of 1 to 3 years, and each female can lay 35 to 90 eggs. This is why we want to catch them early. So, additional signs, you might see, this is called frass coming out of the tree. And what frass is the beetle's excrement as well as the tissue from the tree. So the stuff that's inside the tree, and it's mixed together and it makes this kind of thready looking frass. And you can see it's the size of a dime. This is what it looks like as it kills a tree. And once you have these in here, there's no control. This tree's a goner. Dead, gone, out of here. So, adults are usually flying from July to October. You have to remove infested trees and destroy them by chipping or burning. Imagine all the city trees. We don't have enough money in our cities and counties now, and if they had to take care of this stuff too. Okay, this is the emerald ash borer, and Bev was passing that around along with another green beetle that was not the emerald ash borer but looks really similar. The thing that you need to notice about this that is really indicative is if you see holes in an ash tree shaped like the letter D where one side is flat and you have this rounded side, that's evidence of the emerald ash borer. Now, the bronze birch borer, and we have a sample here of bronze birch borer, does this same kind of hole, and it's related to the emerald ash borer. It does the same kind of hole but in birch trees. The bronze birch borer does not attract ash. So the key is if anybody ever sees this D-shaped hole in an ash tree, you call the state entomologist right then and there. Right then and there. He'll fly in. He has said this. Anywhere in the state, he will fly in immediately. That's how scary this is. So, the questions to ask if you're wondering if it's an emerald ash borer would be, what kind of tree is it? Because it must be an ash. And what does the hole look like? Okay? This is an atypical flat-headed borer because most flat-headed borers' larvae is a flat head. And this one is not like that. So that's pretty hard to characterize. But this is probably a reason why many might attend this training, because we all do have the ash trees. So that's the damage under the bark. You can see, and all these beetles have distinctive patterning underneath the bark. And this is what you'd see in an ash tree as it dies. That's the distribution where it's green, it's not found yet. And then you can see that it's primarily back here. But we don't want it over here. So we're keeping an eye on this one. It's spread up throughout the upper Midwest, and it's often where there are campgrounds because of the firewood. Seriously.
What are the white areas?
The white areas haven't been tested yet. I think that they haven't even been looked at yet. It can also be moved in nursery stock. So this is another, that's why we have nursery inspectors across the state. And there is a quarantine on any ash coming from these infected areas. We are not allowed to get materials from these infected areas. You can't ship things in, plants in. Okay. And if an ash has been purchased from an affected area and somehow gotten through the quarantine, the Nevada Department of Agriculture can come in and take that tree out. And they have done that in Lovelock and Pahrump. They have actually removed trees. The white counties have not been surveyed. I knew I had this. I did prepare. Thank you. So the host is ash only, and 7.5 billion ash trees in the United States are threatened with this tree. Entered in solid packing wood material and spreading through nursery stock and firewood. There is some chemical controls on this, but anytime you're trying to control beetles under the bark, it's really challenging. Imidacloprid might work on this, which is like in bare tree and shrub kind of things. But if it's not done early enough, and usually we don't notice the damage in time to treat with the systemic means you put it on the ground and it goes up and through the trees, or you spray it on the leaves and it moves through the entire tree. But if you start it too early, you've wasted your money, and these things are not cheap. If you start it too late, you've wasted your time because it's already too late. So it's a challenge. Now, this little guy is very, very small. It's kind of like the size of the one that possibly that size or smaller. And what you see is ambrosia is the fungus, the laurel wilt fungus that this critter brings in. And the larvae eat the fungus, so that's why they're carrying it. And then it produces this blue stain disease, and that eventually plugs the vascular system. And so the female enters through the twigs or branches of healthy or stressed trees, or even freshly cut. And then the plant wilts above the plug, wherever that female went through. So think even tinier than that. So they're hard to see. This is the frass right here. So remember in the previous one with the Asian longhorn, it looked very, lots like yarn coming out, lots of different. This one is actually just a straight plug. And here's another one. So if you see that, that might be what you see, because you're probably not going to see the beetle. You might see some of this damage underneath the bark if you were looking. Now, this would be problematic if it got to Nevada because of California's avocado crop. We don't have the plants that this would cause a problem to from an economic standpoint, but it would be just a place for things to get transferred from here to California, and we surely don't want to lose an avocado crop. The pine shoot beetle, again, is another one. This is kind of like one of the ones that might be affecting your Austrian pine. Tiny, tiny, almost to the point where you can't see it. And so this is a Christmas tree plantation, and that shows you the damage here on the ends. The tips die back. You'll see this kind of patterning on the bark. This is how it can look up close where it dies back. And this is probably the insect that started the whole bark beetle concerns. So they reproduce in freshly killed trees, and then when the adults emerge, they feed on new tender branches of living trees. Then they bore in, feed their way up the limb, and emerge again. And this is affected on Austrian pine. This will affect Austrian pine. This will affect Scotch pine, and I'm trying to remember Pinus strobus, and I can't remember what Pinus strobus is. It's a less commonly planted ornamental pine. It might be white pine. So, you're not going to see those too many, but here's a red-haired pine beetle. And this is, of course, because they've got these red hairs on them, hence the name. And you're not, again, they're tiny, tiny, tiny. But if you are out and about and you see pine beetles, if you collect them in wood and you find something, I've got firewood at home that I cut down on my own property and stacked it up away from the trees because I knew I had problems in the trees. And I walk by and I can hear them chewing. That's how loud and how infested. I need to cover that with clear plastic, probably water it down first, cover it, bury the edges, and let the sun just steam in there until it kills them. I definitely don't want to move that wood. So, walnut twig beetle, just found in Carson City. It was never before known to be in Nevada. And we don't have lots of walnut trees, but Carson City Ferris, of the Ferris wheel fame, used to be a landscape architect, and he designed and was did a whole test plot of walnut trees around the Capitol. And so they found this walnut twig beetle in the Capitol, and that's problematic. The holes are so tiny, you can tell here, that's pretty small. Look at that guy. That's just like, okay,
How long would
great.
it take? How long does it take a beetle that size or in that to kill it, like one tree?
You know, that's a very good question. If the tree is really, really healthy, it's going to take a lot longer because the tree that has a lot of water in its sap and stuff is able to pull sap up and push the beetles out. So it might not kill a healthy tree right away. But if a tree is at all stressed, has anything that it's not getting enough water, it's not getting enough nutrients, then that could happen a lot sooner. The more stress, probably the more rapid. I would say within 3 years you could lose a tree easily. And that's probably a medium healthy tree, you know? So, and look at how, this is a different beetle. This is Pithiopterus euglandus, and walnut is eugland, so that's why it's named that. But I want to see and this is Hylarchus, and this has the red hairs, and this has kind of red hairy things too. So it'd be kind of hard if you didn't know what you were looking for. And the way they identify them is by their tarsi, the pieces of the feet, and how many numbers there are to the pieces of the legs and feet, and their mouth parts, etc. So Jeff actually has to see it. He can't just say over the phone what you might have, Jeff being the state entomologist. So it occurs everywhere west of the Mississippi River, and the problem is the fungus, and it's spread through firewood and plant material. So our gold-spotted oak borer, now this would be one that if you saw this, you would pretty much, it's pretty identifiable from these dots, spots. But the thing that you have to be aware of is that even there's other beetles that look like this. So if you see one though, anything with these gold spots, collect it if you can and get it to us, so we'll check it out. And why this? And this is the same. This is a relative of the bronze birch borer and the emerald ash borer. So this critter is problematic, and it's probably spreading in firewood from Mexico. And we don't know if the Nevada oaks, like the black oak, are on the list that this one could infest, but we're keeping an eye out for it just the same. So. Yeah, we've got it in museum specimens as far back as the 1800s. Quercus agrifolia is canyon live oak. That's the big oak tree in California. Chrysolepsis, I can't remember the common name of Chrysolepsis. And then California black oak, Cologii, which we do have up in the mountains. So, especially, and not so much on the Nevada side as on the California side at Tahoe, but there might be areas in Nevada where that could go. So you say, okay, well, if we don't have these trees, we have oaks, though. We have ornamental oaks, so it could be problematic on our ornamental oaks. Oak splendor beetle. This is another, look at the name on this one, another one related to those, the oak borer, gold-spotted oak borer, bronze birch borer, and the European EAB. Emerald ash borer. Whoa, getting too many things in my. And this one hits healthy trees, so that's problematic because most other flat-headed borers, like the bronze birch borer, usually attacks our birch trees because we can't give our trees enough water. Birch trees are water trees. They're supposed to be by creeks and streams and river bottoms, and that's not Nevada. So unless we're really diligent about watering and keeping those roots wet all winter, all spring, all summer, all fall, they get stressed. And so these guys, though, they attack healthy trees, and we definitely have oaks in our landscapes. So on this guy, the Cyrex wood wasp is a wood-boring wasp, and we got lots of samples of the Cyrex. There's the larval sample. I know, I've got too many. They had red, they had Asian. Here, there you go. There you go. The Cyrex wood wasp. Wood-boring wasp. This is not a beetle. This is a whole different family of insects than beetles, as you can tell. But we have problems with this because look at the size, this little horn on the end, and the size of this larvae. He can eat a lot. He can eat a lot, and that's the tunnels. So he does some critical damage to the tree, and this is the sap and the frass and the stuff dripping down the side of a very highly infected tree. Each one of those is coming from a borehole from this wasp. So that's a hugely infected tree. They bore into the vascular tissue that absorbs the water of the plant. And so that prevents the plant from absorbing water. And then it also carries a fungus that kills the tree. And this affects most pines. So it's quite possibly something that could be in an Austrian pine. Okay? So, but they weaken and die primarily due to the fungus being deposited in the tree when the eggs are laid. So let's see where we're at here. So that's our bad guys. Asian longhorn beetle, emerald ash borer are the two worst that we want to keep our eyes out for. These are the different shapes of the larvae. This is like the bark beetles, those real tiny little guys, a round-headed borer, a flat-headed borer, and then the wood wasp. And so they make the flat-headed borer is going to have the D-shaped hole. Round-headed borer will have a rounded hole, and each of the different classes of beetles, it fits one of these shapes of the borers. So what do? The whole idea in the first place is that you want to keep your trees healthy. And the point is we need to fertilize properly and we need to irrigate properly. And you've heard me say it already today, probably twice, we've got to water in the winter. We had a wet winter last year, and it was really, really wonderful. Did you notice how the trees came out of winter very, very healthy? They thrive on that, especially our pines. That's when they get their water, is when they have winter, at least our native pines primarily. But Austrian pines and stuff, we water them all year long. So we want to keep them properly watered. And it's not just pines. Birch trees have to be watered all year long. Your ash trees are usually pretty hardy, so if you give them once a month watering in the fall, once you turn your sprinklers off until you turn your sprinklers back on, if you water your ash trees about once a month, unless it's been hot, we've had 70, 80 degrees in February before, and then we've gone back to freezing cold, so, So avoid wounds. Don't hit them with the string cutter, the weed whacker. Don't ding the bottom of the tree. That sends out a chemical hormone that says, I'm in stress, come attack me. Yes, you hit them with a lawnmower. You prune them at the wrong time of year, particularly pines. That sends out a signal that says, I'm stressed, and they come and attack pruned pines. So pruning for pines is best after a hard freeze in the fall or in late winter before we've had anything to warm them up and get the juices flowing again. If you compact over the roots, bad for trees. So if you add soil, sometimes people see roots, so they start adding soil over the top, and then that cuts down on the airflow, and air is really important. What time do I have? forgot to wear a watch. Okay, we're doing good. I'm right on schedule. Or if you remove soil from the roots for some reason, construction. Construction really can stress a tree. The roots of a tree, if I'm the tree, and here's my canopy, my leaves, then my roots go out 4 to 5 times beyond the end of my branches, all the way around, if there's water. So if it's a lawn, they'll go the whole extent of the lawn, and they go about 18 inches deep primarily. And so if you start doing construction on a mature tree, you've got roots way out there that you can damage. So that can be a real problem.
Now, can I ask one?
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
I know roots on some trees go straight down. and
Not
roots-
really.
Not really?
That's a myth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do pine trees and, let's say, an ash tree or a maple or something, are they, do you
Primary-
water them differently?
The ideal way of watering a tree is to water the entire drip line of the tree to 18 inches deep. So, ideal. I mean, if a tree has been in a lawn and grew up in a lawn, the roots will be in the lawn. So if you take the lawn out and you think you're going to put 2 or 3 emitters at the base of the tree, that tree's not going to do very well because the roots are way out there. So you might have to gradually start watering back further and further in so that you could take out the lawn. Okay? So, if a tree is already infested, sometimes putting small gauge wire into the entry hole. You can sometimes skewer the critter if you can reach them. You can remove and destroy infested, dying, or dead trees or plant parts, including the fallen limbs. Severely infested trees produce pests that attack neighbor trees. So see, I need to do something with my wood that's infested.
Is there a bad time to do that, though? I mean, if the tree is infested, do you
idea-
wait, or do you?
You know, and that's a really good question. If you can prune it out and cover it or burn it right away, haul it off, and you're hauling it off to the dump. Does it instigate flight off on the way to the dump? Do they leave from the dump while they're sitting to be buried? So if you could cover it with the plastic and seal it and bake them out of there, that would probably be the best thing. Because if it's a hazardous tree because it's dead, you might have to remove it. Ideal time to reduce flight is after a hard freeze in the fall. We haven't had that yet. So, but I made the mistake. I pruned some trees out this summer. I took those 2 live trees out this summer, and now I can hear them when I'm walking by, and I'm going, oh, I know better. But I haven't moved it off the property. Okay, burn or chip infested dying plants. Stressed on healthy trees. If there is an insecticide that will work on the beetles, which is rare except for the Asian, possibly the Asian longhorn, but boy, emerald ash borer. If you have emerald ash borer, we want that tree gone. We want that out of here. So you shouldn't really be doing chemical controls on that because we can't afford to have that infestation occur. Some trees though, bronze birch borer, it's everywhere. It's, bronze birch borer is on everybody's trees. You look at your trees, you have D-shaped holes on a birch tree. There are, the imidacloprid is the active ingredient in the chemicals that will work on that. Beware though, that imidacloprid moves up through the tree, and when the tree blooms, bees. Imidacloprid is known for killing bees, so you have to make a decision. Sometimes you're going to have a licensed professional come in with specialized equipment to treat your trees. But products do not kill the larvae in the sapwood or the heartwood, but they can kill adults and larvae tunneling through the treated bark layer. So you're not going to get much help there. So this is the take-home message. Don't carry firewood. Keep your eyes open. We can do some trapping, which would help us to just know if they're in the neighborhood. It's not so much a control method as an identification and to see if they are in the neighborhood. And different kinds of traps lure different kinds of critters, and I don't know which traps. And then if we want to submit samples, this is what Jeff Knight is going to need from you. And he'll take a piece of wood. He'll take the piece of wood. If you think there's, borers in the wood, he'll take the whole piece of wood for you. 2 foot long, he says, 2 foot long wood samples. If wood dries out, it extends the length of time for the insect to emerge. Bring the samples to the Department of Ag and Sparks. And get several wood samples. Good samples are big enough that they won't dry out quickly and enough tissue for the larvae to complete its metamorphosis. So, if you're going to stick them in something, he prefers them either dry, like some of these in the jar I have in these are just dry, but alcohol, and I don't know that we all have access to ethanol 70%, but we can put them in rubbing alcohol, that's his last resort. But larvae, he wants you to kill them in boiling water and then place them in alcohol because they will really get ugly and brown and he won't be able to do anything, they'll just kind of deteriorate. So photos, they're kind of hard to tell from photos. He actually needs the critter to look at it under and the larvae, you can't tell from the larvae at all hardly at what it might be, but it would give him a warning is all, because there's not many things to identify a larvae. And that's Jeff's number. And so you had an issue on something. I'll take questions related to the exotic invasives, or I'll take questions related to your home thing until my time is up.
Yeah, I have a peach tree.
Your peach tree.
Yeah, it's got about 10, well, there's 10 spots on it where the sap has come out to seal the hole and hardened.
Okay, we call that gummosis. Gummosis can be disease-caused, borer-caused, wound-caused, and environmental stress-caused. So, to know that but peach trees are renowned both for the bacterial infection that causes gummosis and for the borers that cause that kind of thing. So, I mean, you could cut behind a ball and see if there's a tunnel, and then if there's a tunnel, it's probably, peach trees are very short-lived. So it would probably be best to remove the tree, particularly if you have other peach trees or if you have other plants in the same family, like apples, pears, cherries, nectarines, are all
another cherry
related.
tree that's the same one.
Yeah.
It was a four different varieties in one tree, and I'm not sure which branches are which anymore. The one branch has died, and I cut mine out. Then the one on the same main trunk, it's died as well. I haven't cut it out yet. I'm just going to watch
Well,
it to
and
see.
when you do,
No, I don't see any penetrations or anything.
okay, because it may be wound cause.
Yeah.
Even hail can cause wounds, and then you can have the gummosis develop in response to the wound. But if you're cutting on a tree and pruning, particularly if you suspect that there's a disease, and with gummosis,
Yeah.
I would just act that it's diseased because there's something wrong there and you don't want to spread it. You want to disinfect your tools between cuts, so you don't cut on this branch that's dead and then take it over to this branch that, oh, it just needs a little shaping and I'm gonna. So I use rubbing alcohol because it doesn't corrode. A lot of people say bleach and water, but then you have to wash your tools really well because the bleach corrodes. So I just get a bottle of rubbing alcohol into a spray bottle and I spray my tools. I just carry it on my belt or in my.
What about spray Lysol? I read that
Some of the
does-
spray Lysols work and some of them don't. So it depends on the active ingredient. You have to read the label.
Oh.
So the active ingredient has to be primarily alcohol of some kind. And it may not say alcohol, it may say ethanol or something. I'm not exactly sure. But sometimes Lysol works fine. Sometimes Lysol can work fine. Most of the times I think it works fine. But and as far as your pine tree is concerned, I would say, do you water? Has it always been watered very regularly and deeply? Yeah. And is it in the lawn? No. So it's outside of a lawn. And is it drip irrigation or hand water? And how often do you water? And how big of a well do you have? And
Fairly regular.
what does that mean?
Once every 3 weeks.
And how old's the tree?
10 years old.
Okay, and do you have a clay soil or a sandy clay? Okay, because that might work in a clay soil because clay soils hold water longer. Sandy would never hold it for 3 weeks. And then do you have a well that's as big as the drip line?
I need to work on it.
Yeah, and that might help with helping and you can cut that top off and then after a hard freeze, and then you can keep that tree real well watered even through the winter, and then you should see that it just sends a new leader up.
No, but they've already done that. But it's amazing how these blobs of sap coming down just.
Yeah, yeah, and there's not a whole lot you can do to keep them. I don't recommend preventative sprays so much because they damage so many beneficial insects. It's basically keeping the tree really healthy. If it can push sap out, it's doing pretty good. Yes.
You talked about the birch.
Yeah.
We're having trouble with the birch borer now, and one person said you put these plugs in it. Another person said you pour this stuff that's like $70, down it. Another one said, oh, you got to call an arborist. So it's like I'm going.
Well, with the birch tree, the primary issue first is not enough water. And so particularly if it's in a lawn, the lawn gets the water and the tree doesn't get the water. So you can remove the lawn out to the drip line is one thing. It might be your whole lawn in regards of a big tree. But the other thing is, there are homeowner products that contain that chemical imidacloprid that you mix into a watering can and you put on the ground around the tree. The problem with those is, as I said, is that it can move through the tree, and then as the birch tree blooms, bees could get some of those problems. However, I have been doing this on my trees because every year I have a new limb die back. And so the timing is important. Some people say to put it on as early as November, so that it moves through the tree, and others say don't put it on till February. I am usually in February because I forget about it in November. And so I try to get it on in early February, late January on the base of the tree. Doesn't make any sense to me. I'm telling you to water out to the drip line. That's where the absorbing roots are. The directions say around the base of the tree. How the heck does that move? But they say it does. It seems to work. But that's the only thing that I know is imidacloprid.
But if you've got them now, I mean, you have to wait until like February?
Yes,
You have to
yes,
wait. So
yes,
you just,
yes.
I thought, well, I've got to be
You
doing
can
something.
have an arborist take care of this. I don't recommend injections because you're wounding the tree. So unless it's a very high value tree and you know that arborist, you have had testimonials, what am I looking for here? Referrals, references that you have checked that this person has the training to do these injection systems. They can do more harm than good by opening up wounds at the base of the tree. So, and the imidacloprid products are usually about $32 for 32 ounces or something.
When I was looking
And
at
it goes by,
$70.
it goes, and they may have gone up. It may go up. What I used to read was an ounce of product for an inch of circumference around the tree. So, I had trees like this that were 32 inches. I needed a hole.
How much water in the winter do you give those trees that need to be watered? And for how long? Is it depending on the height of the tree? Is how much water, how long you water it?
You ask good questions.
I just don't know these things.
Well, and that's a hard one to answer because we can't just say it needs 30 gallons, right? You can't just say that. It depends on the type of the tree. Birch trees, poplars, they need a lot more water, and maples need a lot more water than, say, some of the pines. But the ideal would be is that if you're going to soak the tree, and a small tree, you planted it this year, you're probably going to want to water it once a week or every couple of weeks because it only has this much roots, and so you would water where the ball is. But then as it ages, it's going to need water further out. So I say water to the drip line and try to get it to soak in that much. However long that takes, might be a soaker hose. And here's the issue. If it's freezing cold outside, the water has to be able to soak in. It can't just sit on the top. And you don't want a tree that's in a well flooded, sitting in water, because that's not good for it. So, and you hardly ever, does anybody ever turn their sprinkler system back on in the wintertime, because then you got to drain the whole thing, and you got to do that whole winterizing thing all over again. So it practically requires hauling hoses around. I don't know about you, but I think I have over 100 trees. I have 2.5 acres.
We have 100 hoses.
Yes, I beat you. So this is a really good, how much do you water? You try to get some moisture in the soil. And usually our snow load is so minimal, we don't get very much water in our snow. If you've had it sitting there for a long time and it's a foot deep or more, you're getting some water. But it, you know, we
So it
get.
doesn't get that much, the snow that's sitting there. It's not-
And if the soil is loose enough to dig, you can dig down and see how far down your soil is moist. I recommend everybody get a soil probe. I've got one little handle, a pipe that's cut in the front of it so that it's got a little foot pedal for me because I don't have any body strength up here to push it in the ground. I got to kind of use all 100 pounds of me to shove it in the ground. And you pull it out and you go, oh, wet, wet, dry, wet. Ooh, interesting. They're not expensive. A&L Leonard, the better nurseries have them.
But I noticed that when I'm digging, say a hole a foot deep, we have clay soil.
Yeah.
And the soil stays pretty wet under there. It still needs water.
No, that's where you have to really pay attention. I have sandy soil, so it dries out. But a clay soil will hold water longer, and you have to be careful not to overwater. Not for a birch tree. You can't overwater a birch tree. You can't overwater a poplar.
I got kind of ignorant on the tree. The birch trees are the ones that turn colors.
They're one of the kinds that turn color. They often are droopy and graceful.
We have in the back.
Okay, now the
Birch.
other ones are
That's an ash.
They usually have white bark.
Now the ash.
Yeah.
Now my neighbor has two about a block away that have died, or one is dying. It's huge. We have one in front of our house that's huge, way above the roof line. And I noticed the leaves on one of the branches are starting to look like yellow.
It's time of year. It's supposed to do that right
But I
now.
thought I saw that from the beginning of the year, but it's still the
There-
same.
If you're watering the tree well, if you're not using weed and feed type products where you're poisoning the tree with weed killers, then you and the tree looks really healthy overall.
Yeah.
Trees will lose limbs sometimes. They could have been damaged in a windstorm, and so that connective tissue could have been damaged, and then it's not getting that water that it should have gotten. So, I mean, you're going to lose branches sometimes, not necessarily big ones, but I mean, you shouldn't be losing big branches, but little branches.
It's just the leaves that are kind of a different color than the other part of the tree.
So I would look for a wound, or I would look for anything to
I
tell
was
you
just worried
why.
because my neighbors died,
Yeah.
their trees died. But I think they poured a lot of chemicals.
You got to be careful about using chemicals around trees that can absorb it. Okay, I don't have any idea. Where am I now time-wise?
It's
Done?
12:48, so.
Okay, we need to let our next
Thank you.
person.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay.
Yankee down!